I'm Leslie Stein, Director of the Government Law Center at Albany Law School, and I would like to welcome you to the second program of the 2024 Warren M. Anderson series. I would also like to thank our series sponsor, George Weissman, in memory of Sharon P. O'Connor, Albany Law School class of 1979, and the other sponsors of today's program, who are the Civil Service Employees Association and the law firm of Hinman, Howard, and Cattell. The mission of the Government Law Center is to help state and local governments better serve their communities through nonpartisan legal research and analysis by bringing together a diverse and inclusive group of lawyers, students, scholars, and community partners. We prepare students for careers as skilled and leading attorneys in public service, advance Albany Law School's unique connection to government, and inform nationwide conversations on government and the law. We have a distinguished and knowledgeable panel of speakers today on the important and timely topic of artificial intelligence and government operations. The moderator of the program is the GLC's own Deputy Director and Albany Law School Adjunct Professor Patrick Woods. Before joining the Government Law Center in 2021, Professor Woods was an Assistant Solicitor General in the Appeals and Opinions Bureau of the New York State Attorney General's Office. He primarily briefed and argued appeals on behalf of the state in the New York Court of Appeals, the Appellate Division, and the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. Before that, he was one of 4 U.S. Supreme Court Fellows selected for the year 2015 to 2016, and in that position, he was placed with the U.S. Sentencing Commission. Following his graduation from Albany Law School as valedictorian of his class, Professor Woods clerked for a judge of the Second Circuit and a judge of the United States Court of International Trade. He has published on a variety of legal topics. Before we begin today's program, I want to remind everyone that a code word will be announced during the program, which will be necessary to obtain CLE credit. You should have instructions on how to complete your affidavit and submit that. I will now turn the program over to Professor Woods, who will introduce our panelists.
Good afternoon. As you just heard, I'm Patrick Woods. I'm the Deputy Director of the Government Law Center. You've probably just heard more about me than you've ever wanted to know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to the folks you did want to hear today, which are our esteemed panelists. I'm going to give them each a chance to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their connection to the topic of AI in government. And then we will transform it into more of a conversation where if you have questions you would like, please put them in the Q&A box and we'll try to work them in. So let's start out with you, Glinnesa.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Glinnesa Gailliard. I am class of 07 at Albany Law School. Currently, I am the General Counsel and Director of Legal Compliance and Risk at NYSTEC. The NYSTEC full name is New York State Technology Enterprise Corporation. We partner with state and local and federal governments and municipalities on providing technology solutions. We do everything from helping with RFPs to completing privacy audits and helping with building out privacy programs and everything in between. AI is huge for us as a consultant because a lot of our clients are asking how to incorporate AI in their daily tasks. How can AI help them in bringing services to its constituents? And so we're here to partner with them to make sure they're doing everything that they need to do, being efficient while also being safe and dealing with the risk of the use of AI as it's becoming this big emerging technology.
Shell.
I'm up next. Patrick?
I hit
Did you want...
but
go ahead, Bob.
Oh, I'm sorry. I went out of order. Is that all right, Patrick?
That's fine.
Okay, sorry. My apologies. I'm Bob Riley. I'm the General Counsel for New York State United Teachers, class of 1993. I represent NYSTEC. NYSTEC is one of the largest public sector unions in New York State. Most of our members, or well, many of our members, are regulated by the education law, but we also have many regulated by the civil service law, which is probably our primary focus today. I do have some a paper that's amongst the other papers in the written materials. Part of that paper was written by AI. Those parts are identified. The rest of it is written by me with my artifice of intelligence. And given that, there is a glaring typo in it. There is a phrase that should say AI is going to free employees from routine tasks. It instead says it's going to free employees for routine tasks. So hopefully, that typo will be obvious. And that brings up a good point. If you think you're going to be able to totally rely on AI and there won't be any of these typos or other mistakes, that's an erroneous assumption, as we'll hear more later in the program. Even with AI, you need a good quality assurance program because it does make errors. And I feel confident that it's not going to replace me anytime soon, and I don't think it's going to be replacing any workers anytime soon. And in fact, it may create work at the end of the day. So I'll pass it along now to the proper person.
Thanks, Bob. And Patrick, I'll just go ahead and introduce myself, not being shy at all. Hi, everyone. My name's Michelle Jones, Albany Law School, class of 2004. I am the Chief Risk and Data Privacy Officer with the Office of Information Technology Services, or ITS. And so the Chief Risk and Data Privacy Office itself is responsible for building and managing a team of risk and privacy professionals. We work on developing and maintaining an enterprise governance risk and compliance program, and we help in establishing a vision for the statewide IT privacy program. ITS itself as an agency provides technology services to support the amazing work the state does for its residents. I would say New York State has been using AI for a while now to bolster its cyber defenses and to supplement its call centers, to identify and reduce fraud, and to monitor our overall environment. Just historically, the RPA, robotic process automation, was the solution to get New York out from under the massive unemployment surge we saw during COVID. It was also instrumental in getting vulnerable families the assistance they needed and deserved. And New York State found out very quickly that the unemployment surge was happening on a scale far too large to be solved by humans alone. And so we needed this technology to assist in those services. I was part of the stakeholder group that helped work on the acceptable use of artificial intelligence technology policy that was published in January on the 8th of this year through ITS. And ITS issued the policy to help provide guidance to state agencies as they implement AI.
Professor?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. My name's Cary Coglianese, and I guess I'm the only one on this panel who's not an alum of the Albany Law School. So that makes it even more of a distinct honor and privilege, really, to be among you. I'm very delighted to be here. I am on the faculty at the law school at the University of Pennsylvania, where I also have an appointment in our political science department. And maybe more relevant to this conversation, I'm the founder and the director of the Penn program on regulation, which is a program that links together about 60 faculty from across the university. And we focus on all sorts of issues related to regulation and offer executive education programs, research offerings, and other outreach efforts like the conversation we're having today. I've been working on the connection between technology and regulation really for the last 30 years or so in a variety of different forms, At the federal level, there's a website called regulations.gov that grew out of some collaboration that I was able to help forge some conversations around as part of a National Science Foundation initiative back in the 1990s, early 2000s. And in the last 8 or so years, I've been focusing more specifically on artificial intelligence and its use by government and the ways that government can and should be overseeing the private sector use of regulation or of artificial intelligence through regulation. I guess, at the outset, I would just want to offer maybe a couple of clarifying or conceptual comments. One builds on, I think, an important point that underlies Michelle's comments. I think there's a difference we want to establish between automation and artificial intelligence. So there's a lot, been for many, many years, IT systems that have automation built into them. And those systems have and rely upon algorithms of various kinds too. What's new today with artificial intelligence is the sophistication, if you will, of the algorithms, the way these algorithms can detect patterns in large quantities of data, patterns that might not even be discernible to humans, patterns that can't even be specified in advance, and patterns that also might be hard to intuitively explain. And this is one of the challenges with respect to artificial intelligence and its use by government, and that is it is often thought of as an opaque technology inherently because humans are not specifying the variables that are being used to make some kind of forecast or prediction. The algorithm itself is programmed to learn. That's why it's called machine learning, and to identify those patterns on its own, if you will. So these are autonomous or what semi-autonomous algorithms. They're also, I guess, to build on another point that's worth noting here, there are also a wide variety of different forms of machine learning algorithms or different types of artificial intelligence. What I think comes most immediately to mind today are these large language models or forms of generative AI that we're hearing about and maybe even trying out, whether it's OpenAI's ChatGPT or Google's Bard or now Gemini, various image creation AI tools that are called DALL-E. These are certainly one type of artificial intelligence tool, but they're not the only type. In fact, rather than think about artificial intelligence as a single technology, I think it's important at the outset here that we recognize that it's a set of technologies. And as we have the conversation going forward, I think that's important to keep in mind as well.
I think that segues in nicely to the first question that I had for all of you, which you've already talked about quite a bit, I think, but I do want to, which is, when we say AI in this context, what sort of technologies are we actually talking about? Because it conjures up various images in people's minds, from ChatGPT to HAL 9000 to Deep Blue. So I know in the state guidance that there is a definition, and is that, Michelle, do you want to talk to that a little bit and see if how well it meshes up with what Professor Coglianese just said?
Absolutely, Patrick. And so the AI policy at acceptable use policy at ITS uses the definition from 15 USC section 9401, the National Artificial Intelligence Initiative. And so for the purposes of the policy, AI is defined as that machine-based system that can, for a given set of human-defined objectives, make predictions, recommendations, or decisions influencing real or virtual environments. The definition goes on to include artificial systems use, machine and human-based inputs that perceive real and virtual environments, abstract such perceptions into models through analysis in an automated manner, and use model inference to formulate options for information or action. That there is a specific definition that we use from the federal government.
Yeah, and Patrick, if I can just jump in and say, yes, there is a definition in the United States Code, and that's in President Biden's executive order, and it's in the agency policy. But I mean, you can read it. It's so incredibly broad; it can mean almost anything, and that's part of the problem. There really isn't any real good definition of AI. It's not one thing. We sit here today like talking about like it's a thing, but it's not a thing. It's a whole bunch of things, and AI has been around for decades, but not in the way it's now with the ChatGPT coming out. So we have to be, if you're going to regulate AI, if you're going to be implementing AI, you have to know what it is and what exactly you're talking about. You know, so it's a buzzword, but it can mean many, many different things.
And I, just building on those 2 points, if I may, and I think, you know, the one of the key aspects of the definition in the federal code is the use of some algorithm to make predictions. And really, that's what I think at its core we're talking about here. But these are, rather than humans actually specifying mathematical variables and a mathematical relationship between variables, as you would have in, say, standard regression analysis, where, you know, a human identifies, you know, X number of variables and defines whether it's going to be a linear or nonlinear relationship or so forth. The parameters of a machine learning algorithm are set in a broader level. There's an objective of what is trying to be predicted that the human sets. And then there's some strategies that are identified for the algorithm to perform, but there aren't the pre-selected variables. Rather, you, in effect, unleash the algorithm on a large volume of data, and it infers some kind of connections itself. That's a process called training the algorithm. Or training the machine learning. And then once you have a trained algorithm on a certain set of data, you can then apply it to the broader data and use it in a real-time manner. Those are some general characteristics that, regardless of the specific type of algorithm, we're really looking at predictions, not, by the way, making causal statements. So there may be a great deal of accuracy that a machine learning algorithm figures out why I might like a particular movie to watch next on Netflix, and that's being done by an AI algorithm, or why someone might have on a radiograph a breast cancer, for example. That's pattern recognition being done by AI, or why a certain building might be appropriate for building inspectors to go inspect because it's likely to be in violation of some code. There's not necessarily going to come out of this process more than a prediction. It's often going to be just that, not really an ability to say, well, here's why we think this building needs to be inspected, or here's what's specifically wrong with the building, that you might find even in conventional statistical analysis. But nevertheless, because it's trained on a large volume of data, these things can be remarkably powerful, maybe eerily so. Like, why does it know that I might want that next movie given what I've watched before? And really what these new tools that we're seeing today, these large language models, are doing is mainly doing the same thing, but they're sort of taking a prompt that you put into the system and then making a prediction of what kind of answer will make sense. And given the first word in the answer, They make a prediction for what would likely be a good second word and a third word. And because this is being trained on data throughout the entire internet, billions upon billions upon billions of texts, it's proven to be remarkably and again, eerily accurate. And I'll just lead with one relevant fact for those of us here in the audience who are lawyers, and certainly for any of us at law schools. When ChatGPT was released in November of 2022, in November of 2022, in version 3.5, OpenAI reported that they had tested how well this did on performing and completing the uniform bar exam. It didn't do well. It failed. It didn't score even at the 10% level. But by March of last year, now less than 6 months later, March of 2023, OpenAI releases ChatGPT version 4.0, and that's one that's certainly taken a lot of the world by storm. Well, one of the reasons why it is they tested it again on the uniform bar exam, and this time it passed, and it passed at the 90th percentile level. Now, just think about that. I mean, we have our humans, our students, taking 3 years of law school and often a bar review prep for a few months before taking the bar exam and seeking to pass it. This algorithm, trained on the large corpus of language out there, was able to pass the uniform bar exam, both multiple choice and essay exams, at the 90th percentile level after just about 3 months' time. So these are very, very powerful new tools. But again, as Robert has said, these are just one of many different types of tools and one of many different types of applications that we will see today and going forward in the years ahead.
I think that somewhat answers a question that I see that we have in the chat, which is, when will AI be smart enough to write a legal memo? And I know that my knee-jerk reaction to that is never, until it becomes admitted to the state bar somewhere, because all attorneys have an obligation to themselves overlook all of the work that they do and that they submit. And attorneys have already gotten in trouble for trying to have ChatGPT write their legal submissions.
Right.
But one of the things, does anybody want to jump in on that or disagree?
Well, just
I
just
do.
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I
You
defer
sure?
to
Okay.
Glinnesa. Come on, Glinnesa.
No, because that has, that's been a very large topic in the different areas where we're talking about AI and some of the risks and considerations. Yes, it's a great learning module and a great tool to analyze large amounts of data. It's a great tool to help with writing, making things sound better, so on and so forth. But we have to go into, okay, where does our legal ethics start? And like you said, Patrick, it starts with the beginning, where, okay, I know people who are utilizing ChatGPT to help them write their legal memos, to help them put together a legal writing, but that doesn't mean that you set it and forget it. You definitely have to look it over, make sure it's sufficient, make sure it's accurate, make sure it's representing your client in the best way possible. And if it's not doing those things, then you need to look at something different and make changes so it does what you're looking to achieve, and hopefully have the effect you're looking for it to have. So, to answer that question, they may be helping draft legal memos at this stage, depending on your prompts, depending on what you're putting into it. But the actual writing and the submission and making sure the information is accurate is upon us and incumbent upon us as attorneys. With the biggest case out of New York of all states, which I was like, okay, New York is leading the charge yet again, but not in ways we wanted to. The attorney set it and forget it, and and then ask the application, are you citing real sources? That just doesn't make any type of sense to me as a practitioner. And that's what happened. It started doing what they call hallucinations, which are they're pulling data from places that don't exist. It's non-existent data, but it sounds good and it looks good and it's very believable in the way in which it's written, in the way in which it's presented in its output. But if you're not doing the fact checking, if you're not citing the sources, and there are some language models that do cite their sources, and you can ask it to cite the sources to make that job a little bit less daunting, then you don't know whether or not what you're getting is an accurate depiction of the law, actual representation of the law, and putting your license on the line for not being able to zealously advocate for a client.
And just to follow up, I mean, Professor Coglianese, I believe he used the word eerie. It is scary if you haven't experimented with ChatGPT or other AIs yet. You will be scared when you do. You will be afraid because you can have ChatGPT read a set of cases and then ask it to, summarize and give you the holdings of those cases, and then make an argument and give you the format, the work product in the format of a brief. And it will do that for you, and it will do it for you in like 10 seconds. It is really scary. But again, as Glinnesa has pointed out, as I think we've all said, you can't just rely on it. You have to double check it. There has to be you have to introduce a quality assurance program along with your AI, because otherwise you're in peril. And as Glinnesa mentioned, attorneys have already gotten in trouble for it, and I'm sure it's just the tip of the iceberg. So
that reminds me of the extremely important CLE code word.
Yes, for those of you who are seeking CLE credit, you need to write a code word down on your form. There is one code word for this program, and that word is system. If you are joining here on your computer, you'll see it on your screen. That word is system, SYSTEM. Thank you.
Can I just build a little bit on the conversation we had before the code word and use maybe the code word in this answer? There's systems that are digital systems, and there's also systems that are human systems. And I think the choice going forward for us always has to be, how does the digital system or the AI or digital algorithm compare with the human ones? And yes, it's true. And everything that has been said about being careful with these tools today definitely applies, especially if one is relying on them to draft a legal memo or any other kind of legal document. On the other hand, in some sense, that's always been true. When I went to law school, we were taught not to rely on the head notes in the West law system. Those were crafted by humans, right? But they were not the law, and they might contain a little bit of a misrepresentation or misunderstanding of the case. You had to read the case for yourself and really understand it. So I think it is definitely true that the AI systems are not perfect. They do make mistakes. Often they make mistakes that we as humans wouldn't make, but if overall, in certain contexts, they are making fewer mistakes, then I think governments need to be open to exploring the possibility in a responsible way to deploy these systems to help improve government operations. And at the federal level, I should note that the federal government has released a database comprising about 700 use cases for AI across the federal government. Most of these are in the area of research right now. Probably the second biggest area tends to be in enforcement. That is just to identify, where to send scarce auditors or inspectors Others in the form of chat bots and customer relations, sometimes in terms of processing large volumes of documents. We don't yet see, and I haven't found any use at the federal level, at least. And obviously, it's harder to know at the state level because state and local level because there's so many different governments, but I have yet to find an instance where we fully replaced a human, where there's no human oversight. So hopefully, one of the things that we can do is think about ways that humans can interact with these tools and use these tools as partners, as collaborators, so that we can kind of get the best of both worlds, get the efficiencies that can come from an AI tool, but avoid some of the mistakes that humans wouldn't make from these tools hallucinating, as Glinnesa aptly put it.
I think there's a strong parallel in both legal oversight, which we have an ethical obligation to provide, and I think some aspects of the state guidance in terms of how humans have to be involved in decision-making processes involving AI. Michelle, is that something you can expand on?
So it is part of our acceptable use AI policy, human oversight, and state entities. And state entities have a specific definition, so I'll just start there. That is, state government is defined in Executive Order 1171, or state agencies as defined in Section 101 of the State Technology Law. But yes, one of the most important components of the AI acceptable use policy is human oversight. State entities must ensure human oversight by appropriate staff so that it's the automated final decisions are not permitted and must be reviewed. State entities also have to document the outcomes, decisions, supporting methodologies where AI systems are used in aiding decisions making that impact on the public.
And this is what we're seeing, by the way, across the globe, quite frankly. The U.S. With the executive order that 14110 that President Biden issued in October, the EU with its AI Act, which is in virtually final form now, are all calling for types of AI auditing and oversight for this very reason. Maybe not in every particular use it's needed. So I don't know if we need human oversight for AI in our, building thermostats, maybe. I don't but certainly when they are in decision critical and consequential uses where they're impacting safety or the rights of individuals.
So I want to shift gears a little bit here, because one of the things that we've already talked about is that in training these models, they're relying on large amounts of data. But ultimately, the data belongs to somebody, and some of it may be data that is either confidential by law or confidential by contract, or just something people consider private. And it strikes me that this is particularly a concern for certain government agencies, ones that have personal medical information. And I'm curious to hear for whoever wants to jump in on it first, what are the challenges there, and maybe the ways that you can protect privacy in the data.
It's hard not to jump in right away as the privacy officer for New York. When you did you want to say something, I'll defer. Definitely go ahead.
No, I can definitely go there. As I stated earlier, we're a technology contracting company, so we partner with various state, local, and federal governments, municipalities in their technology and data privacy, and in the data privacy space. What's important for us as we were trying to develop an AI policy in-house is understanding what our partners were looking at, how they were defining and utilizing AI. And what we come to find is that a lot of our partners asked us for guidance, which is great. It's great that they asked us for guidance and leaned on us for that. And what we find very helpful, like the executive orders that have come out, both in the regulations from the federal government, has helped us in building our AI, because we want to make sure, in our contractual arrangements, we have a definition for what's confidential, which is kind of a loose, amorphous definition, as in any contract, what is confidential information. But as we're using these language learning models, some of them are open, some of them are not. So we need guidance from our partners to say to us, what is it that you deem as confidential? So that means looking at our contracts and looking at what is deemed confidential. It could be public, but still be confidential at the same time, for different and various reasons. So it's very important upon our partners to really look at the data that they're utilizing and giving to us to process and manage, and defining and not making those definitions so broad. We have to narrow it down, especially for AI purposes, because if you're using an open language model, that means, and we've seen the headlines on companies putting in proprietary information and open language models that other people who was not meant to see were able to access that information. And so we don't want to do that. So it's important that the safeguards have guidance from our partners, which are the governmental agencies, to tell us and help us with definitions. We also internally have our own AI policy as well, because we have information that we as a nonprofit corporation are utilizing that may be confidential to us. So there's two prongs to that, and it's very important, as the agency start implementing policies, that you partner with your consultants, understand what they're seeing, and collaboratively come together to determine what can be inserted into these language models, what kind of language models, what kind of privacy considerations both partners have regarding the information, especially if you're dealing with personally identifiable information such as PHI, or PII, or personal health information, which is a higher standard and gets HIPAA laws involved because it's PHI. So it's very important that the guidance comes from the partners, because we as consultants can define it however we want. But if it doesn't match, or if there's not synergy, there's going to be problems with data getting out that is not supposed to. Hopefully that answered the question, and that wasn't too long-winded.
And just to piggyback sort of on what Glinnesa is saying, I think with any technology, there are benefits and risks. And so part of our job is to ensure we maximize those benefits for the agencies and the taxpayers and the residents, while identifying and mitigating the risk, one of which is privacy. We talk a little bit about data subjects or transparency. So where members of the public interact directly with the state entity system that uses AI technology, the guidance in this policy, the AI acceptable use policy, says that the use of such AI technology should be disclosed. It's the notice component of transparency. Other privacy considerations with AI are accuracy of data, and we touched upon that already. Retention, use, true consent from a data subject. Really, we're looking at trying to embed privacy into data lifecycle in these AI systems. So I think that's where the policy is very helpful to offer guidance.
Yeah, if I could just jump in, and I think this in part goes back to a discussion earlier about what's the difference between AI and automation, right? It's AI that we're talking about. I think people are thinking of open AI, Chat GPT and other things. You cannot give your confidential data to Chat GPT because then it's no longer confidential, right? Microsoft or whomever is operating that will have access to your confidential information, whether it's PHI or client confidential information or whatever. So, you know, if you're an agency or organization and you want AI to work on only your stuff, you know, it has to be limited to that. And I'm not technologically sophisticated enough to know what that means. But then we're starting to sound more like automation, which we've had, you know, forever now. So what is AI in that circumstance? You know, again, I don't have the answer. I don't know, Professor.
Well, if I may, then you know, I think what you're exactly right. Certainly, privacy concerns have been surrounding the use of large data sets by governments for decades now. So you might say, what's new? I don't think there's anything inherently new. Those privacy laws are still there. They're very important. Any tool that uses large amounts of data, you're going to have to be concerned about them. I think the thing that's different is that the transparency, first of all, that Michelle said, is that we don't necessarily know exactly why an algorithm reached an outcome that it did. So that's important. The other thing too is that there's just increasingly going to be a dependence upon government contractors to be developing these systems, deploying these systems. That's always been true too with automation, but it is important here because sometimes the contracts, the standard contracts, have allowed data analyst firms who've developed an AI system to say, you know, not only is the algorithm a black box algorithm and we can't really tell why it's getting the results, but we're not going to tell you anything about the algorithm either, because that's all trade secret protected. And in 2017, a federal district court actually held that this was a due process violation in a case of where a company had what I think was actually a non-machine learning algorithm, but nevertheless an algorithm that it was claiming trade secret protection over, which was used to identify and assess the performance of public school teachers. And the teachers union took the school district to court, and they won on a preliminary matter where the court said there's enough here to show a due process violation because this firm, this outside firm, is claiming trade secret protection. So I think what it means, that case means for us today going forward, anybody in a governmental setting that is relying on a contractor to develop or use or deploy AI tools, you just need to be really careful about how the procurement process is structured and how the contract is written, so that you can later, whether it's in litigation or whether it's just in interacting with the public or with at a legislative hearing, be able to sufficiently explain how the algorithm has been structured, how it's been tested, how it's been validated. These are all things that, quite frankly, firms can reasonably be expected to disclose about their algorithm. I think it's, you know, this isn't a plausible case of trade secret protection at all. And the public deserves to know that. So just make sure that as you're procuring these tools, you are recognizing some of the special challenges related to transparency and privacy, and build into the contracts language that will allow you to be able to, you know, have the contractor live up to the expectations that you may, as a government agency, have to fulfill down the road.
Right, and I think that's something that I'm, you know, just sort of an aha moment for me is that, you know, you can't just go out to open AI. You know, your agency needs to procure an AI system for your use, right? So that's something that people need to be. I mean, maybe it's obvious to everyone, but it's maybe it wasn't to me.
Yeah, and it's not just for your use, it's for the use of people who are contracting to support you as well, and understanding and making sure whether or not they are trained on that system, and it's the risks and rewards of utilizing that system and how it can better support you as the state agency or the governmental entity. There are a lot of different ones out there. I think Microsoft is really putting in a lot of work to find what what would work as a closed model through the Azure project. But it's very important that you guys are the driver, and you guys tell us what data is beyond what's already defined in federal regulation or state regulation. You tell us what's confidential. You tell us what's private, and you let us know what it is that is acceptable to you as far as usage regarding AI and other type of technologies. So it's very important to really make sure that you have a good policy that you can share with the people you're partnering with, so everybody's on the same page going into the relationship. You don't want to backtrack this. You don't want to backpedal this. It's something that has to be forward thinking. That's all I have.
So this is a little bit to the side, but it's relevant to all five of us as attorneys and many members of our audience. There are several questions in the chat regarding whether we think that there's additional or there are modifications to the rules of professional conduct, either the model rules or New York's rules, to account for use of AI. Are there thoughts among us on that?
Maybe I don't understand the question. I mean, the rules deal with technology generally. They don't specifically address AI. You have to make sure your AI use conforms with the rules and not vice versa, right?
Yeah, it may be useful though to sort of add an exclamation point on some of the existing standards about confidentiality of information and what is a responsible form of legal practice, to highlight some of the peculiar difficulties or dangers that might come about in the context of a legal practice. The Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court in his end of the year report in 2023, for example, devoted his entire statement really to technology and AI, and made some cautionary remarks. There's a new policy that's been issued by the English and Wales Judicial Conference that adds what are common sense kind of guidelines for the use of AI tools by judges. So I think, it's important, whether it's in the form of new rules specifically or just in additional guidance or training or the like, to really add an exclamation point. Don't forget your ethical responsibilities just because you have a seductive AI tool in front of you.
Right. And what the rules do say now is that lawyers have an obligation to know about the benefit and risks of new technologies. So you can't ignore AI. You have to learn about it. You have to learn the pros and the cons. I mean, that's in the rules now.
And not only that, I think that the rules, the rules govern, they're ethical rules, right, on how for us to ethically do our jobs. It is not a rule telling you which technologies you should use in order to ethically do your job. So we have a choice of what technologies we want to use. I know, it totally pains me when I hear that I have some practitioners tracking their cases on Microsoft Excel. It works for them. But how do you track emails? How do you track client communications? For me, I would have a problem with that. And that's technology that's been around for a lot longer than AI has. So how you practice is your choice, so long as it meets within the guidelines of the rules. So I'm not seeing where, they would add an additional rule on how to use AI, because AI is just another tool. And we don't have rules on tools. We have tools on ethical practices in order to keep your law license.
The sort of one of the flip sides of the confidentiality things we were talking about is transparency. And we've talked a bit about the concerns about algorithmic transparency, but it also occurs to me that there will probably, as AI use expands, be questions about public disclosure laws. So for example, if you get a FOIL request for what you asked your AI, are you going to have to turn that over? Absent some other exception. I see heads nodding. Does that mean yes?
Well,
It depends.
it depends. Yeah, there's a short piece in my paper on that, but I think the way I came out is that it would be a record, but there might be an exception that would cover it. But I think it would clearly be a record on the New York FOIL law anyway.
All right, so we only have 7 minutes left in our hour, and I want to give each of you the opportunity to talk about if there is something particularly important that you think government and government attorneys should know. Now's the time to get the last word in. Why don't we start with you, Professor?
So I guess I'd build on a point that Robert said about our ethical responsibilities to think about both the benefits and the risks. You can't ignore either one. And when it comes to the benefits, I think, and the risks, quite frankly, the relevant question is ultimately compared to what? The current systems that we have right now that are human-based are biased, slow, error-prone. They're not perfect. I don't want to denigrate them or anybody who's part of those governmental processes. We're all human, and humans make mistakes, and humans have implicit biases. And so some of the dangers with AI tools are not unique. Some of them, quite frankly, draw from the fact that they're being trained on data that have these human biases and errors built into them. But our challenge, it seems to me, in the future is to try to do better than we can today. It won't be perfect, perhaps, with using AI tools in the governmental setting, but if it's better than what we have today, that's not something to overlook. I mean, I have received inquiries from criminal defendants who say they would love to have an AI judge decide their case because of the huge backlog that it's taken to get a resolution of it. That's true also in the administrative context, where a lot of disability or other kinds of benefit claims can take a long, long time to process. The hopeful vision, and it maybe is a hopeful vision, is that we can have responsible applications of AI tools in government to do better than what we're able to do right now with humans. It's not to say that it will be perfect, but hopefully it will be better.
Glinnesa?
I don't know how I can come in after that, but I will try my best. One of the things I want to really implore is that AI is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. In actuality, the technology is being integrated with a lot of the systems and tools we're using today, from emails to legal research software, just general Google searches. AI, even when I go and I text, they're like, well, you can use AI to text. And I'm like, I don't. But but you have to really use it in a responsible way and understand how you wish to use it. You can't just blindly use it. That's a high risk. It leaves you open to mistakes and putting information out there that you don't want. As we're talking in this setting, we also have to expand it to our personal lives. Do we want everybody to know, even though Instagram is showing us what we've eaten today, or is there some things you want to be private? Think about that on a larger scale when we're talking about the government. Is there some things that we don't want government to share? Is there some things we do? And what does that look like? And how does AI intertwine and make that an easier process? To me, it's all about understanding the technology, learning about it, and figuring out how you can best utilize it to, like the professor said, make things better, maybe be a little bit faster. That's basically what I'm looking at it for. And I'm hoping that others look at it in that way. I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just understanding and understanding the risk, minimizing the risk, and utilizing it in the best way possible.
Michelle?
I think, as Governor Hochul said, it shouldn't be difficult or frustrating to interact with the state agency, and AI presents us with this opportunity to improve our capacity, save time, clear up and speed up backlogs, enhance the customer experience, maybe even improve the workplace experience for our employees. So AI is one of those tools we have in our toolbox to sort of enhance the work that's already being done. And then rather than shrinking our workforce, we at ITS are planning on growing over the next few years and right-sizing IT to meet the growing digital need of our state. And so ITS is one of the handful of agencies who will add employees as a result of the executive budget. So please keep your eye out for opportunities. If you'd like to join our agency work, we'd be glad to have you on board.
Bob, last word.
Oh, the last words. Okay, well, I will jump on this bandwagon, although noting, I know people have concerns, legitimate concerns about how AI might be used for surveillance and evaluation, and things like that. But I think we can address them. I too think that AI can be used to benefit the government, its constituents, as well as its workers. Just to borrow some words from that I have in the paper from published in the Harvard Business Review. It says governments can choose to invest in the quality of its services. They can reemploy workers' time towards more rewarding work that requires lateral thinking, empathy, creativity, all things that humans continue to outperform, in this person's opinion, even the most sophisticated AI program. So I think with the right vision, with the right use, keeping in mind all the caveats, it can be used to improve the lives of workers. Some people think we're going to get a 4-day work week out of this. Woohoo! Wouldn't that be great? So it has a lot of positives, but we need to be aware of the risks and the rewards. But it's any other tool. Like when Google came in, we used Google. This is what we're going to have to deal with, right? This is what we have to use.
Thank you. Thank you all. I do want to express our appreciation to our panelists for a very informative and thought-provoking discussion. I'm sure that we have barely scratched the surface. I hope that the more than 200 attendees that we had found it similarly stimulating. I'm sure they did. And I want to invite you all to attend our next program on April 16th on the New York State Redistricting Revisited, and you see that up on your screen. And then on May 7th, the budget process and the power of the government. And please, for those who are seeking CLE credit, submit your affidavits to Lisa Rivage so that you get that credit. Again, thank you so much to our panelists and to Patrick for moderating the discussion.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.